Hello people. Today we're going to talk about the one and only Autism Speaks. So, if you don't know who they are an organization founded by two conservative grandparents named Bob and Suzanne Wright, who had a grandson named Christian that was diagnosed as autistic when he was a baby. He had the aggressive type of autism and lost his speech. Apparently, they said he had about 800 words and lost them by the time he was 2. And that was, after that diagnosis, they paid over $10,000 for a diagnosis, which is kind of ridiculous if you ask me. And that is when they founded Autism Speaks, with the aim to cure autistic people. Now, of course, as you would guess, autistic people everywhere for years since their inception have been campaigning against them and trying to take them down, because a lot of the material they put out there is extremely problematic. It's very hard to describe. You would have to just watch to find out. For your convenience, I'm going to put the video I Am Autism in here because it's something you really need to see to believe. Just a trigger warning, it is very scary in the way that it's narrated, and it is not for someone with a weak stomach. So here you go.
I am autism. I'm visible in your children, but if I can help it, I am invisible to you until it's too late. I know where you live, and guess what? I live there too. I hover around all of you. I know no color barrier, no religion, no morality, no currency. I speak your language fluently, and with every voice I take away, I acquire yet another language. I work very quickly. I work faster than pediatric AIDS, cancer, and diabetes combined. And if you are happily married, I will make sure that your marriage fails. Your money will fall into my hands, and I will bankrupt you for my own self-gain. I don't sleep, so I make sure you don't either. I will make it virtually impossible for your family to easily attend a temple, a birthday party, a public park, without a struggle, without embarrassment, without pain. You have no cure for me. Your scientists don't have the resources, and I relish their desperation. Your neighbors are happier to pretend that I don't exist, of course, until it's their child. I am autism. I have no interest in right or wrong. I derive great pleasure out of your loneliness. I will fight to take away your hope. I will plot to rob you of your children and your dreams. I will make sure that every day you wake up, you will cry, wondering who will take care of my child after I die. And the truth is, I am still winning, and you are scared, and you should be. I am autism. You ignored me. That was a mistake.
And to autism I say,
I am a father,
a mother,
a grandparent,
a brother,
a sister.
We will spend every waking hour trying to weaken you.
We don't need sleep because we will not rest until you do.
Family can be much stronger than autism ever anticipated, and we will not be intimidated by you, nor will the love and strength of my community.
I am a parent riding towards you, and you can push me off this horse time and time again, but I will get up, climb back on, and ride on with the message.
Autism, you forget who we are. You forget who you are dealing with. You forget the spirit of mothers and daughters and fathers and sons.
We are
the United Kingdom.
The United States.
We are Argentina.
We are the European Union.
We are the United Nations.
We are coming together in all climates.
We call on all faiths.
We search with technology
And voodoo.
prayer and
Herbs, genetic studies,
And a growing awareness you never anticipated.
We have had challenges, but we are the best when overcoming them.
we speak the only language that matters, love for our children.
Our capacity to love is greater than your capacity to overwhelm.
Autism is naive.
you are alone.
We are a community of warriors.
We have a voice.
You think because some of our children cannot speak, we cannot hear them? That is autism's weakness.
You think that because my child lives behind a wall, I am afraid to knock it down with my bare hands?
You have not properly been introduced to this community of parents and grandparents, of siblings and friends and school teachers, therapists, pediatricians and scientists.
Autism If you are not scared, you should be.
When you came for my child, you forgot.
You came for me.
Autism. Are you listening?
Now, a little bit of background about the video. It was written by Billy Man, who is one of the board members of Autism Speaks and is still there today. The narration is a poem that he wrote about his son Jasper, who has high support needs. He wrote it with the intention to get the government and United Nations on board with trying to cure autism. That's why the narrator sounds like the devil, because we all know that if you have someone talk like that, the government's going to say, oh gee, this is some serious shit. He actually wrote an apology for the video on Facebook 10 years later, as he probably forgot the fact that autistic people have an astounding memory. Thanks to some activists for archiving it, he basically goes on about his accomplishments and how it was hard to parent an autistic child. At first he was hesitant to show it, with Simon Baron-Cohen saying, might the high-functioning autistic people take offense to this notion? But Suzanne Wright, unsurprisingly, pressed Billy to read it at a conference in England, and apparently the audience cried. Well, gee, I wonder why. He then shot this commercial with Alfonso Cuarón, director of Gravity and Children of Men. Cuarón also has an autistic son. Now let's take a little look at this video step by step.
I am autism. I'm visible in your children, but if I can help it, I am invisible to you until it's too late. I know where you live, and guess what? I live there too.
What, is this the plot of A Stranger Calls or something? Like, autism is not this stalker in the night that kidnaps your child. It's the way their brain develops. I don't understand how they couldn't have understood this in 2009 when the Autism Network International existed over a decade prior, and the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network had existed for a couple years before that. Speaking of which, they are big rivals because, of course, ASAN is more in tune with trying to help autistic people and get them to live better lives, while Autism Speaks is not about that. They're more about getting rid of it entirely and forgetting about the autistic people that already exist. And yeah, I guess you can definitely tell why there's a rivalry.
I work faster than pediatric AIDS, cancer, and diabetes combined.
Wow. He just compared autism to pediatric AIDS, diabetes, and cancer. Now, here's the difference between those and autism. Pediatric AIDS, diabetes, and cancer kill. Autism does not. So where's the comparison?
And if you are happily married, I will make sure that your marriage fails.
Yeah, you should also know that Autism Speaks at this time made up a bogus report that 80% of children with autistic parents, they get divorced. That is complete bullshit, because I looked up a study from WebMD from 2010 that said that the rate of divorce between parents of autistic children was 64%. What was the rate of those with neurotypical children? 65%.
Your money will fall into my hands, and I will bankrupt you for my own self-gain.
Now, to be fair, a lot of those costs that bankrupt these parents, a lot of it goes towards ABA therapy, which is absolutely ridiculous in price and always has been since it was invented. But then again, ABA is extremely problematic and has caused a lot of PTSD. Actually, Henny Kupferstein, who was an autistic psychologist, did a study and found that over 46% of autistic people who go through ABA experience PTSD. So that's one thing that could be crossed off and would save parents a lot of money. And honestly, you can get so much better elsewhere with speech and occupational therapy. Now that is what should be covered by insurance.
I will make it virtually impossible for your family to easily attend a temple, a birthday party, a public park, without a struggle, without embarrassment, without pain.
Now, keep in mind that Billy Man and the rest of the board of Autism Speaks are made up of parents who were very rich and very well off. So when they talk about being embarrassed, it's just because they are looking bad in front of their business partners. Well, guess what? That's too bad, because those business partners need to understand that autistic people are a certain way and that's how they are. But also, on the other hand, why are you taking your kids to places where they feel distressed? Like, if the lights in a grocery store bother them, either don't bring them or you ask them to turn the lights down. And if they refuse, then you keep on going at them and campaign parents against that grocery store. I mean, it's not that hard. When you have a child, you fight for them no matter what disability they have. That's just what you do. When you become a parent, it's not about you anymore. It's about them. You have to do whatever you can do to make them happy. So if they go to a place where they're not happy, then do whatever you can to make them happy. Now, of course, it's easier said than done, but it's just when people say that they're embarrassed by their children, it hurts, because like my parents growing up, they were never embarrassed by my behavior. At least they never seemed that way. Like when I was in distress, they understood. Like when I was a child, I had a meltdown at Walmart because we went to a different Walmart than the one that we were used to, and my grandparents would have to like drag me out of the store. And of course they never took it on me personally, because they knew that I couldn't control myself and that I had a reason for acting the way I did. That's why with this video it seems that the parents seem to lack empathy for their children. Like, it's all about like how the parent feels and their embarrassment, instead of understanding that the child is acting that way because of distress.
And the truth is, I am still winning, and you are scared, and you should be. I am autism. You ignored me. That was a mistake.
Fun fact, that kid sitting against the wall is Jasper, Billy Man's son, that he wrote the poem about. You kind of feel bad for him. It's kind of like a metaphor of just how alone he feels, because his family just doesn't understand him. Or at least this poem pretty much implies that.
Family can be much stronger than autism ever anticipated, and we will not be intimidated by you.
Why can't the family be strong with an autistic child? Why can't you teach a child to empower themselves and be able to stand up to bullies and to advocate for themselves? Like, you can still have a functioning family with an autistic child as long as you accommodate them properly. It seems that Autism Speaks just led a lot of these parents astray, which you gotta realize their followers, it's not always their fault. They're just very brainwashed by this organization because they're the ones with the money, they're the ones with the power and influence. I kind of feel bad that they weren't led down the right path of accommodating their child the right way. That's why I wish ASAN had more power in the media to be able to get parents on their side, because they really do just want to make the world a better place for our people. And also notice how that dad is like grabbing his son and the son is pushing him off. Like, leave him alone. If he doesn't want to be touched, don't touch him.
In all climates.
We call on all faiths.
We search with technology
And voodoo.
Prayer and
Herbs.
Voodoo, prayer, and herbs. What kind of fucked up shit were they doing in private with these kids? Were they like trying to play with a voodoo doll to manipulate them? Or perhaps like blowing nightshade in their face? It sounds horrible. And like, are these parents really that desperate to get rid of their child's autism? Seriously, it's not that horrible. I mean, come on.
Love is greater than your capacity.
There they are, Bob and Suzanne Wright themselves, along with Katie, their daughter, and Christian, the grandson, and Matthias, their other grandson.
To overwhelm.
Now there's Jasper, along with Billy and his mother Gina, and what appears to be his two other siblings.
You think because some of our children cannot speak, we cannot hear them?
the irony there is quite stunning, as non-speakers are communicating with their behaviors, but it seems that Autism Speaks and their crowd tend to ignore that and write it off as nonsense when it's not. So that statement is completely backhanded.
You think that because my child lives behind a wall, I am afraid to knock it down with my bare hands?
You have not properly been introduced to this community of parents and grandparents, of siblings and friends and school teachers, therapists, pediatricians and scientists.
Autism, if you are not scared, you should be.
When you came for my child, you forgot.
You came for me.
Autism, are you listening?
So yeah, this video is basically like an indoctrination for a cult. If you don't believe me, just look at how all those voices just sync up with each other and make out like they're victims of the dreaded autism. Now, I'm definitely not the first YouTuber to talk about this video, nor will I be the last, but if you're autistic and going to be talking about Autism Speaks, that video is one of the key essentials, because, as FDR puts it, it will be a day that will live in infamy. And some people may say, well, Autism Speaks has changed. No, not that much. It hasn't. Maybe on a superficial level it has, but at the end of the day, they still do have the views that they have. For example, this picture by Paul Goring, who is the husband of one of the board members, Lisa Goring. And he says, "You got nothing better to do than to bash people who give a shit? Can't." Well, actually, that was sent to one of the board members of Fierce Autistics and Allies, which led a protest last year against Autism Speaks during their virtual walk in April. And yeah, they clearly did not like that we had words to say that disagreed with theirs, so that was their response. So yeah, that's definitely not surprising coming from Autism Speaks. So there's a video I discovered that could be just as bad, if not worse, than I'm Autism, titled Autism Speaks Show August 14th, 2013. So this is when Suzanne Wright was still alive, who actually died in 2016, and they're basically being interviewed by this lady in Nantucket, and they're talking about their initiatives that they were doing at the time, and they also talked to other people who were doing autism programs. So it goes on for over an hour long. Of course, I can't show the entire thing, but I will be discussing some clips from it, as is definitely worth attention, because they don't even hold back. They just say exactly what they think, and yeah, it's something that people really need to know about.
Autism Speaks was born with our dear friend Bernie Marcus giving us $25 million to begin this journey that is now going into our 9th year, and now we have a worldwide awareness, and it's all because of a little boy named Christian.
No, I'm kind of shocked she didn't say it was small loan of $25 million. Actually, they were friends with Donald Trump, so yeah, that would have been a great moment to use that line. But anyway, Bernie Marcus, believe it or not, actually has the Marcus Autism Program, which is an ABA center and also does studies, one of which involves extracting stem cells and implanting it in children, which is extremely unethical, and I don't know how they're able to even legally do that, but you should definitely know about that. Bernie Marcus actually started like his advocacy as the CEO of Home Depot, and he saw that one of his employees couldn't make it to work because their son was autistic and needed her help. I could just imagine when he was there, he was like, "Well, that kid has autism. That's a problem. We gotta get rid of that." Yeah, it's pretty scary. Like, he subjects them to stem cells. Like, what the fuck is wrong with him? I really wish he could be arrested, but he's rich. He wouldn't be able to anyhow, even if they tried. But yeah.
Biggest challenge to me right now is to have the urgency, not only in this country, but around the world. This is generations of children to come that will be diagnosed with autism. And we as a country and as a world, we have to stop. And I also believe, too, that if we get the country, especially involved with this, just like we did with AIDS around the world. I mean, if we can do what we did for AIDS, look at, we have generations of children that I have no hope of where these numbers are coming from and how they're getting this. So we have to find out why this is happening, and I believe that that will open the door to a lot of the issues in the brain.
Okay, so she just goes straight to the point, huh? Talking about how future generations will be lost to the autism. It makes it sound so scary, like it's a disease, and of course, she's got to compare it to AIDS again for some reason, while one kills and the other doesn't. It's not much different from the 1920s eugenics movement, which determined disabilities and other differences as undesirable, and therefore they tried to sterilize people in mental hospitals, which the Nazis actually copied from the American 1920s eugenics movement, believe it or not. I actually found that out from Neurodiversity by Steve Silverman. Great book, check that out. And also, I can believe, like I'm willing to believe that when she talks about that, she's probably talking about like Christian's autism, which like Christian has seizures and GI issues, and yeah, I think GI issues and seizures definitely need to be treated, which there needs to be like medication for it and stuff, but to wipe them out, to wipe autistic people out, that's awful. Like she should have just said, like, we don't want our children to have problems like GI issues and seizures, be specific. But no, it's just autism she's talking about, and that's what's so scary.
Our kids don't, they don't look like there's something wrong with them.
That's right.
And that's a hard thing conceptually for a lot of people to say, well, what's wrong with him? Until they realize that neither he can't speak, he's not social, he doesn't have any motor skills. So I think that, it's more for me as the country becomes and the world becomes with our World Day. People are going to really know that there's an urgency here because this is the generation. We have to save the generations to come.
Save them from what? Autism doesn't kill. Like, does she not know this? Also, from the way she sounds, it seems like she just cannot fathom a world with people who are different from herself. That autism is just not normal, that it's something that has to be erased. Well, sorry to break it to you, but we've always existed and we always will. So, thankfully her dream of curing us never got to come to fruition before she died.
But these kids, some of them are very, very different. And the bullying aspect is very hurtful and really affects them very deeply. So that's another thing that we're trying to do, to get the mothers, the PTAs, to educate everybody that this is okay. Autism is all right. Just, you don't make fun of somebody who doesn't have, maybe the hair on their head because they have cancer. Well, you don't do that to somebody that's awkward socially.
Okay, well, I will give them that one, that they acknowledge how bad bullying is, which it is, not just for autistic people, but for everyone. But then she had to say the cancer thing again, so that I pretty much take back my point to them. So now they're back down to 0 points.
Our most significant project is, we call it Autism 10. And we have genetic materials from 10,000 families, 10,000 pieces of genetic material from families with autism, and we have all the phenotyping. The phenotyping means it details what that medical treatment has been, when that child was diagnosed, how old that child is, and so forth, and you match it up with the genetic samples, and the program is to go to whole genome sequencing. To completely sequence all those pieces of material, and we're in that process right now. And the first lot that has been sequenced and reported on is just out in last week in the American Journal of Human Genetics, And it explains that in this very first lot that's been sequenced and analyzed, they have found a number of different variables and variants that they can genetically account for. In other words, they can say it looks like this and it looks like that, and that's a big breakthrough. That's the beginning of saying that here's 6 different autisms, perhaps, not just one.
Okay.
And this group looks like this, and this group matches up here. This is very expensive, very hard to do, but we're in it, and we're way ahead of other people in that. That's a big one.
Now, what he's referring to there is what's now called the Missing Project, spelled MSSNG, to basically formulate 10,000 genomes together to find the causes or subtypes of autism as he's referring to. As you can tell, that's incredibly dooming because they're basically trying to find the cause. And once they find the cause, guess what happens next? They're going to be able to detect autistic babies in the womb and be able to destroy them, leading to lower populations of autistic people. It's quite scary, as the world needs autistic people, more of them, not less of them.
And they do that because they see that the productivity loss here is significant. If you're going to lose 1 to 2% of your male population to autism, that means they're not going to be productive, and that means you're part of your population. Not only are they not productive, but they have to be cared for.
But they live a lifelong span.
So they look at that and they say, well, this is something we have to fight this. We see this coming.
Of course, seeing a billionaire like him talking about productivity in layman's terms basically means, how can he be productive for me? How can he create production for me? How can he make more money to put into my pockets? That's basically the way he's coming across here. And it's not that autistic people don't want to be productive. We want to be productive, but since companies are not hiring us because of stigma, that's part of the reason. If you did hire us, more money would be flowing through and the GDP would increase. But because some just have difficulties in motor skills and stuff, automatically that just makes them not able to have jobs. Well, here's a solution. For example, at a pizzeria, you can hire an autistic person and put a sign on the window that says, we have autistic people working here for inclusivity, and put a disclaimer on the paper that says the person may display such and such behaviors, so that way the customer knows what's going to happen going in. And it also would be good for the community because it sees that they're making an effort to hire disabled people. It's not that hard. This guy's a billionaire, and I just figured that out in 10 seconds to come up with that. And plus, he has the money and the power to go to a CEO's office and be like, you gotta hire these people, and plus just listen to him. He's a pretty scary looking guy. It's kind of hard not to listen to a guy like that, so I don't know why he doesn't flex his muscles like that. So next is a video, like an animated video of Christian's brother Matthias Hildebrand, and they're young here, and he's talking about how hard it is to be a sibling of an autistic child. So just think about what it makes you feel as you watch it, because it just feels strange and pretty ableist in my opinion.
My name's Matthias and I'm 8 years old. My brother's Christian and he's 10 and he has autism. What I like about Christian is his sense of humor. He makes me laugh a lot. The most fun I've been with Christian is when we go into the ocean and we play. When Christian and I are in the ocean, you can't really tell Christian has autism. Christian would like to swim across the ocean. It's hard for him to talk, and when it does, it's like it just comes out with not right. He has the words locked inside of him. Sometimes people stare and it's a little uncomfortable. At night, there's always a loud sound of Christian crying in the other room. It's one of the times that's hard to have a brother with autism. I would like the world to actually find something that could help Christian with his autism.
Visit autismspeaks.org.
Now, to be fair to Matthias here, since he's so young, it's pretty obvious that these views were not really his own. I'm sure his grandparents and mother told him to say these things, or at least shaped his outlook. And I can understand the staring part because, yeah, that's got to be hard, especially when they just stare and not help. That is something that absolutely needs to change, but that's a stigma, and that is one of the things that Autism Speaks should be correcting. But even still, you know, you see a lot of people with their autistic child and people around will just not help, which is wrong. That's got to change. And also, when he says when the words come out that they're not right, well, there's no specific right way of communicating. Everybody communicates differently. And whether it has to be through an iPad or pictures or pointing at things, those are all equally valid. So to say that it's not right is wrong, but that's not his fault. Obviously, his mother and grandparents told him that, but still.
At the Empire State Building, Autism Speaks Global Ambassador Yoko Ono and the Walmart family, longtime supporters of the organization, and parents of 7-year-old piano prodigy Ethan, flipped the switch to turn this iconic New York City building blue.
I mean, for the one who broke up the Beatles, is it any surprise that she was there? No, I know, that's a very debatable what broke the Beatles up, but I had to put that in there. If only these kids knew what they were singing along to and what that cause they were a part of was contributing to. The elimination of an entire race of people. It's quite ominous, but it's so hard to get that song out of your head too. And you know, blue light is kind of hard for autistic people because a lot of us are very light sensitive, so it's basically like trying to flash it in our face to kind of make us normal, to make us just go with it, like ABA. If you look at it like that, to see it in so many landmarks, it's scary. Their influence just spreading.
On April 13th, Autism Speaks raised more than $275,000 with the first Light Up the Blues concert hosted by Kristen and Steven Stills and emceed by Jack Black at Club Nokia in Los Angeles. This all-star show featured Crosby, Stills and Nash, Ryan Adams, Ricky Lee Jones, Lucinda Williams, and Don Felder, along with inspirational performances by musicians on the autism spectrum.
Jack Black, Steven Stills, the Eagles? No! I gotta get rid of the records now, man. God, they were some of my favorites.
Barack Obama, along with over 100 local and state government leaders, issued an official proclamation in support of World Autism Awareness Day. The president also announced the launch of a $100 million brain science initiative to help researchers find new ways to treat, cure, and potentially prevent brain disorders such as autism.
Well, for anyone who is a neurodiversity advocate and was an Obama fan, now you have a reason not to. And they say right there that they're trying to cure and prevent autism. The only way you can prevent that is by destroying the baby in the womb. You can't just go in and change the child's brain as it's developing. That's impossible. So basically, it would be genocide. I'm glad it hasn't come to that point, but they're still working on it with the Missing Project. And also, UC Davis apparently came out with a report that said that they can detect 20% of like potentially autistic births through the mother's blood, like even before she conceives. Now, I have talked to some people who say that that science is a little bit unreliable, but only time will tell.
And we've discovered that in the minority communities, especially Latino and African American, the diagnosis is coming much too late.
Okay.
And it's coming all in the school system, which means they're 6 or 7 years old when they're getting diagnosed. And that's we know that they've lost considerable time. If they were diagnosed at 2 and they had some treatment or a lot of it, intervention, they would have a much, much better chance of being able to matriculate through the school system, a public school system, at or near age level with help. And we know if you don't have that, if you show up and they get diagnosed there, it's a very, very tough haul.
Yes, it is true that minorities do often get underdiagnosed or mislabeled as something different. Same goes for trans and non-binary people as well. But his goal here is to get them into mainstream classrooms, which should not have to be the goal, because special ed is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Just make it have better ways of teaching them and better accommodations. That's what should be the goal here. But he keeps thinking that the problem is with the autism instead of with the system. You know, for a man who has the power to change the system, he really is completely unaware of the potential that he actually has to do such. Now, taking care of an autistic child or disabled child is not easy. I wasn't easy for my parents to take care of. So that's why I think while parents should be prepared for a child that's disabled, the best way to do that would be by giving them resources to help the child thrive, rather than encouraging them to mourn the existence of their child, such as in Autism Speaks' 100-day kit. Of course, integrating autistic people into the community and teaching young children in school to embrace autistic people would be a great start, as opposed to fearing them. Autistic behaviors can be difficult for people to understand at first, which is why education through a compassionate and non-biased approach is the key. There are also a lot better charities you can follow, such as the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, the Autistic Women's and Non-Binary Network, the Autistic Cooperative, Fierce Autistics and Allies, Awesome Training, Communication First, the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint, and many others. Now, this is the first ever YouTube video I've ever done, so if you enjoyed it and would like to see more, definitely please like and subscribe. Thank you all, and have a blessed night.